All right, hey everybody, we're Super Monkey Fighters, back with a What Would You Change movie podcast. This week we are going through the Wicker Man. Before we get into that, though, I am Loki here with Papa Nugget and Monkey Feathers.
Hello.
Hey, hey.
And yeah, so we're gonna go through the Wicker Man. It's the 2006 version with Nicolas Cage. Might be a little bit of a Nicolas Cage theme going on recently. It was directed by Neil LaBute, however you'd pronounce that. He was also one of the writers, along with Anthony Schaefer. It stars Nicolas Cage, Ellen Burstyn, Leelee Sobieski, and let's see, Kate Beahan. Molly Parker is in it. What do you guys think?
Okay. So I haven't even seen the I guess like the 1973 version. I think
Which
that's when it
apparently is considered to be like a great film.
Well, when you look at what they changed between that one and the 2006 version, there's so much. This movie is so confusing because the original version, it makes sense. Oh, it's paganism, and they're going to sacrifice someone to build their crops. That makes sense because it falls in line with like a lot of paganism, worshiping and thoughts and all that. Whereas this, it's just, we want our bees back. We love bees and more bees. And just some of the choices and changes between at least just reading about the original and this one. There's just so much about this movie that it's so confusing to where it's hard to just say, oh, I don't like this, this, and this. Because I could just pick this movie apart and just say, I don't like the movie. And just be done with it. Because
Yeah, and I got that too. Like it almost seemed to me like they were like trying to be mysterious about what was happening, but in doing so, it just you're like, what's going on? Like all the what do the flashbacks and all his hallucinations really have to do with anything? Other
That's
than
one of
him
the things
just
that
like we're gonna throw some hallucinations in there to make it all weird and like what's going on, but they don't really like mean anything or lead to anything or conclude anywhere. They just kind of just throwed it in to confuse everyone a little bit.
Yeah, there was
Well,
a
I
lot of
think it
just,
was-
hey, this would be an interesting thing to look at. Let's do that. Like,
Yeah.
they were gags. They weren't.
Well, I think
character
it was
development or
supposed to
story or
be. I think it's supposed to be showing that he was in post-traumatic stress. Because, granted, you don't know because the whole beginning part of the movie, is it real or is it not? I don't know. But if it is, then I think the idea was supposed to be like showing post-traumatic stress, like this incident of this car getting destroyed in front of him and he couldn't save the girl or the mother or anything. And I think it was supposed to be post-traumatic stress. But even then, it still made everything confusing. And that's probably the one thing that I can zero out and say, I don't like this.
Yeah,
because with how it happened throughout the movie, especially the one part that really sticks out is where he's running down to the dock and then he imagines Rowan underneath the dock and all that, but then it turns out to be some really weird hallucination.
It's the dream within a dream.
Yeah, like a dream within a dream, to where things like that were just starting to make it more and more confusing.
Well, and it was hard to tell if they were trying to do those as jump scares or, kind of what they were trying to do with that. So, I don't know. The thing that struck me odd at the beginning is he's kind of moody. Like he's either kind of just normal or he's really angry all the time. And so it's kind of hard.
Shifts really quick.
He's trying to be this like badass cop, but then he's wearing a sweater vest. And so it's kind of hard.
That is judgmenting. That's being judgmental. Because I think you can be badass and wear a sweater vest. How dare you? How dare you? Anything that you say that you liked about the film?
I did like kind of just the general settings of it. Like the opening scene kind of, I know it's supposed to be California, but it felt very familiar. Just the background, the backdrops, which kind of helped me, settle in a little bit with it. But then just some of the opening scene, the jarring cuts on things they really quickly edited. It just was jarring on that.
I said not dislike.
I'm trying to, we've all gone through a lot of things we didn't like so far in our likes section.
Yes. Well, we just jumped right into the dislikes.
There were scenes here and there, interactions that I think were okay. The scene when the girl's chopping wood and he walks up and then she's like, "When you leave, will you take me with you?" Like, that scene on its own is a really interesting, creepy scene. Ends kind of poorly. Like, she says that and he's just like, "Okay," and walks off.
This is awkward.
Yeah. And in the greater scheme of it doesn't make any sense, because that's one of the characters who's like all on board. I mean, even at the end, she's there. She's in the final scene, right? It's that girl there, not, which is just out of place. Like, she's kind of this side character who's just sort of there.
But she's supposed to represent the continuation of like their whatever you would call it,
ritual.
Yeah, their ritual. Their scheme. Their con.
Yeah. Yeah. But like I said, that scene kind of on its own fit really well. I think they tried to do some really cool things, like when he's running through the house and busting open the doors and there's just some dude on a bed or the girl covered in bees. Like, but that really wasn't anything. It was just another one of those, like, hey, here's this weird thing, feel uncomfortable and awkward. And it's like, it didn't have any impact. Like, I think those were some missed opportunities. You could kind of see where they wanted to go with it, but there's really not a whole lot to say good about this. So yeah, I don't know.
It's not your favorite movie you've ever seen?
It's not. Well, and to be fair, I knew where it was going, so I think if I had seen it when it first came out, I'd have different feelings. But watching this is like, well, this is obvious. Like, you can see the path that they've put him on, and you know where it's going to go. And so there's no real surprise. There's no real shock. There's no real twists. But I don't think they really did a good job of showcasing those anyway. The only thing that was certain was that everyone was lying to him the entire time. And the biggest question that comes out of it is, why the hell is he even there? Like, the motivation for him to go there and stay there and continue to try and do what he's doing is just baffling. So,
and it's all really just boils down to he's there because it's the noble thing to do, right? To get to the bottom of this disappearance.
Which is why they chose him, right? Because it's
Even then, I can't remember how many years it had been since he had seen his ex-fiancée, to where you would have expected, in a normal situation, someone would have moved on and been doing something completely different with their life. Whereas he just dropped everything and decided, yeah, I'll go to this random island and I will help you search for this daughter I don't know with this, because he doesn't know that it's his.
Yeah.
Spoiler. Sorry, people.
Well, if you're this far into a movie that's 14 years old at this point.
Yeah.
A remake of one that's 40 years old.
But he in the remake, or in the original, he has no relation.
Yeah.
To the Willow. But yeah, that was a strange thing for me to just see, that this guy's going to drop everything for a woman he hasn't seen in years, for a daughter that he doesn't know is his. What? There's no reason for him to do that.
It's a surprise to him when he finds out too, which you're like, you really, buddy? You didn't like figure that out? Like, why didn't you ask the father? Like, they keep referring to it, the mystery father, as the father, not as, and so it's, I mean, they just, the filmmakers made that very obvious to the audience. And then by the time that, you don't connect with the character because he's just dumb at that point in time. Like, and there's even a point where he starts running around the village, just breaking down doors, trying to find kids and like knocking masks off the kids at the festivals. And you're just like,
it's going into spaz mode.
Yeah. And you're like, and at no point in time does anybody try to stop him. They're just like, and that doesn't raise any alarms for him. And so, And it also with the twist at the end where he's the sacrifice doesn't make sense either because there's several times where they work against him or try to kill him or put him in situations where he could, die. And so, they lock him in the crypt and it's full of water. And it's just like, well, what happens if he, or there's bees everywhere and he's allergic to bees. What happens if he got stung by a random bee sooner than when he did?
Well, that's something that is interesting because with people who have a bee allergy, you can't be near bees. And he rides his bike into like a field of bees. Yeah, a beehive colony.
Yeah.
Like, are you...
Well, and then instead of backing out of it when he sees where he's at, he runs through it.
Yeah.
And rolls down a hill into a hive, and it's And
so this dude's allergic to bees. In a situation like that, that guy's dead. He would probably be dead in 2 minutes, if not sooner. But they save him because they don't need him to die just yet. Yeah.
Everybody seems really weird and just counterintuitive, and they're working against themselves but for themselves, and they never really tie together how any of that makes any sense.
Well, what about you, Papa Nugget? What did you love about the film?
So I have not seen the original, and I had not. This is my first time seeing this one as well. So it was all new to me. But I'd heard a number of people talk about the movie.
Yes.
There's been plenty of talk. And so I kind of had my expectations, I think, kind of set pretty low going into it. So I think initially, it didn't seem terrible. And I kind of liked the cultish kind of theme that was going on with it. And so that was intriguing. But I think one of the main issues is, it was trying to be a serious movie, but it came off more as a comedy than anything. And then a lot of the things that we've kind of been talking about, it just seems like they were trying to be confusing, whether or not they were trying to be confusing, but they were trying to be mysterious about everything. It just didn't make the plot fit together, and the story didn't come together. And so it seemed like it actually started out okay-ish, and then it just kept going downhill. It never got better. But I am interested actually in going back and watching the original because it sounds like it's done much better than this one.
Well, apparently there's also The Wicker Tree that came out in 2011.
You mean the spiritual successor of, what is it, the original
I think that's actually
Wicker
what it's
Man?
called, from the makers of the cult classic, The Wicker Man. Yes.
Okay, so the original.
Yeah.
But it's a spiritual successor, so you know how well that's going to be.
Here's the thing. At least on IMDb, it has 0.1 higher than the Nicolas Cage Wicker Man. So Nicolas Cage Wicker Man is 3.7 out of 10. The Wicker Tree is 3.8. That's another thing I think they did really well. That scene when he first arrives on the island and his interactions with the people there, I think they did that really well to establish the inhabitants of the island, right?
The culture,
their personalities, the culture, and I think they just didn't build on that. That was kind of the standard, and it nothing ever quite got to that level ever again.
And it seemed like they never really explained the whole.
What's in the bag?
No,
what's in the bag?
The
What's
deal
in
with
the bag?
all the men. They alluded, they were touching on it, and they showed some of the men that lived on the island, and they all had brain damage. But they didn't really. I didn't seem like they really explained it in depth what was going on.
Yeah, they didn't really flush out those ideas. I mean, he even kind of tries to call them on it.
Yeah,
where it's they're subservient. They're like, no, we're not, and it's like, well, obviously you are. And then it's just everything's just kind of glossed over.
Yeah.
It seems like the men they've had their tongues cut out or something like that.
That's what it seemed like.
But you don't know.
You don't know why.
Yeah.
You don't know any backstory. Yeah. You just know that's how it is.
Yeah. There's a lot of those moments that you're just like, why is this a thing? and we'll never know. And
And I think those are
random.
important things like that, like would add depth to the story.
Yeah.
Like understanding how did all these people get on this island? Why are they there? Like,
Yeah.
not just that they're there and this is what they're currently doing and that's what
Yeah.
they've done, and just accept it.
So, sounds like there's quite a bit we would all change about it. Anything particular that stands? So I guess one thing that I would say, because I think we've all already kind of talked about it off camera a little bit, but it's the bees scene. I think that's what this movie's most famous for, is
Bees!
not the bees, as they dumped it on his head, which apparently wasn't in the actual movie. It's an extended scene off the DVD release.
Or
Which-
it's just like an alternate version of the movie.
Yeah.
I'm not entirely
Which
sure where it falls.
explains why more people saw it, because I'm sure more people saw it on DVD
Than in theaters.
than actually saw it in theaters, and so that's the version that they saw. But yeah, not actually in the movie. They cut it out.
You can watch it
But
on
yeah,
YouTube.
you've all probably seen it already.
So you
I
would
think
change
that's something I would have probably left that in, or
The B
done
scene?
more of, like, and I think maybe that's part of what hindered the movie is it was PG-13, but maybe they were trying to go for more gruesome things. Like, I think some of those things might have stood out a little bit more if they actually committed to them, but maybe not. I don't know. I don't know if that would have been enough to save it.
make a movie, and if it turns out to be R, then make a movie and commit to it. But if it's going to be PG-13, still commit to it. That's something that I find disappointing with a lot of movies that end up being PG-13, is it could have done much better if they committed to making it an R-rated, because it would have made things make more sense and more realistic or whatever in its portrayal. So whether or not they cut the B scene because it was for an R rating and they wanted PG-13, or they just didn't want such a iconic, quotable scene in their movie, who knows?
I think the other thing I would have changed is just pick kind of normal or totally crazy all the time for your, like, not flipping at the you're talking to a group of school children and all of a sudden you're calling them all dirty little liars or whatever, and it's
Or
just
I think you said
flick
it
of a
earlier,
switch.
running through the whole town, knocking masks off children, just trying
Yeah,
to...
breaking down doors, and I just think making that not even keel, but just pick one and stick to it. Don't go back and forth between those kinds of things. I think that would have helped it quite a bit. I think just sticking more to explaining things, I think, would have been a big to do, right?
Yeah, I think
Like,
that's
not
a big
just
one.
I open a door and there's a weird thing I'm looking at, and I just go and walk away. Like, why? That doesn't make any sense. So,
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to do things just for the shock value and just for the presentation, like, it's only skin deep, right? So,
yeah.
like, yeah, it just makes everything seem cheesy if that's all you have, or you have too much of it throughout
Yeah.
the movie.
So then what would you change, Papa Nugget?
That's the biggest thing I would change, is like make more sense as to what's going on, and like develop characters and at least the group of people on the island, and like have it make more sense as to like why they're there, like what I want to know more about them, not just, oh, there's just some weird people here and I'm gonna run around on the island and try and find this supposed missing girl. Like,
Because maybe the biggest thing would have changed is just keep the 1973 version around. That's generally my thought with most remakes, is why don't you just re-release it? Like, I get you don't get might not be as big a fanfare to remake it, but you already told the story. If you're not going to do anything
Better.
different or better, then just release the old one, and there you go with that. So, Monkey Feathers, anything you would change?
The movie. It shouldn't have just
The
been.
movie.
It just shouldn't have been made. I agree with your statement of things making sense, but for me, it comes down to a lot of the visions or hallucinations or flashbacks or whatever you want to call them. either explain it or get rid of it. Because
Connect
I
it to
think it
something.
just,
Yeah.
yeah, I think it just created more confusion because it just made it like, why is he having them in these moments? Like
Yeah.
with him running down to the dock and he hallucinates Rowan underneath the water. Like, why is he having them? And if it's post-traumatic stress, then explain that. Because I know that he's taking pills as soon as he has an hallucination. So I imagine that's what it is. But there's no explanation. And for them just to happen randomly throughout.
Well, and the other weird thing is
Yeah.
he seems to be fully aware that they are hallucinations when they're happening.
Yeah.
Because he
Except sometimes he's not. That's
Yeah.
also, yeah,
It's
because the same
strange.
dock scene, he runs down thinking she's underneath there, and then all of a sudden he pops awake. Oh, wow, I just was having this dream, and she's not really under there.
and then he's holding her, and then he jump scaring
Yeah.
him what was awake. But when he's on the ferry before he gets out to the island, he sees her standing there and doesn't
Well, he
react.
sees a girl standing there.
He sees a girl standing there who looks like her and
then
doesn't
she
do
gets hit by a
anything, and
train.
then she gets hit by
or
a train.
a car. A train or a car, or the.
It seemed
a
like a
train.
train in the flashbacks, but
Yeah.
so like, you know, he seems to be fully aware then that he was having a hallucination, but
And maybe that's their whole reason for the whole reason for them is as to why he went to the island was because he was having those hallucinations. Like maybe that's their explanation.
Maybe.
Because he was having the hallucinations, he decided, oh, maybe I should go to the island. Maybe they're connected, but they don't explain any of that.
Yeah.
So
Even
I
then,
mean,
that
like, that's
seems
a stretch.
very, very
Yeah.
far-fetched
Yeah.
of an answer.
But
For him
that's
to
the
jump to
best I
that
can come up
conclusion.
with.
Oh no, I get it. But it's also just, oh, I'm having these hallucinations, and I got called by my ex-fiancée of 10 years ago, and all of a sudden, these are now connected, and it's magic. No, I think it's too far-fetched.
So would you recommend people see it? Because I wouldn't.
I recommend it at least once because it does have the unexpected comedy factor in it. So you'll probably laugh at least
Yeah.
once over something really stupid. So
I
I would say at least once. And
It'll,
if you
watched it.
find
it'll get you for the comedic value.
I watched it
yes.
today
Yes.
and didn't think of anything funny in it, but now that you say that, I do remember funny things. His freaking karate kicks all over the place.
Yes.
That was. I'll take it back. That's my favorite part of the movie. Is he like karate kicks and like throat punches and stuff like that. It's
The punch you see from a mile
punchy-
away as he just slowly walks up to the woman and stares
Yeah.
at her and then punches her.
yes.
So
And-
I would recommend it at
Yeah.
least once because you'll probably find it funny. After that, you know, the decision's your own. But I recommend it at least once.
Yeah. So, so that's that. We're as we're wrapping up our episode on the Wicker Man, and let us know in the comments what you thought of the movie. If we're wrong, if it's cinema gold, because to me
If
it's one of
Hollywood
those.
was wrong.
It's not even so cheesy. It's good. It's so cheesy you should miss it. So, but let us know, and we'll catch you next one. You're awesome.